Hey guys, welcome back to another Dragonheir Silent Gods video. Today I want to talk to you all about presets and skill timings and how they work and why they are so important. So, once you master this setting in the game, you will truly unlock the full potential of your account and be able to push things further than you were able to before, especially when it comes to using auto teams instead of having to manual everything. So, in terms of skill timings, I know a lot of people aren't actually aware how to use these. So if we have a little look here, obviously we've got all of the presets available to us. If we just click on this one here, so as you can see here, we've got skill timings. So there's skill casting interval, and that is how frequently you'll be using your skills. And the first skill casting time is when your first use of your ultimate skill will take place. All of this does revolve around your ultimate skills. So obviously, as you can see on the side here, we've got all of the information about our hero's ultimate skills, and as long as you've got this set up correctly, they will use those skills as often as you like them to. Obviously, you can change how long the distance between each cast is, and you can choose when they're using their first, allowing you just to get into a run, press auto, and you can walk away, and it will do the same thing you've set it up to do every single time. So, in terms of the benefits of using this whole system, it is so useful to be able to save your teams for each different dungeon, your Vortex team, obviously all of the Continental bosses and the otherworldly exploration bosses. You can just set them all up here, you can save the team, and recently they did actually add the section here where you can save their gear. So you never have to worry about moving your gear between your heroes. You can quite simply, at the click of a button, pull in all of the gear that they were using or that you've got set for them to use in these runs. So, just as an example here, if I wanted to use my Venom team, I just click the equipment plan button and click use. I can't actually deploy them here because I've done this boss already with these heroes, but if we jump on over to Grave of Venom first, we'll have a little look about the skill timings. I'll talk you through the best way to set up your timings for that dungeon, and then we'll cover the other dungeons too. So, first of all, obviously, as I said, we've got Grave of Venom. Here we go. So in Grave of Venom, if I select the team that I've got set up for Grave of Venom and I click the equipment plan, all of their gear will be automatically pulled in. So all of these heroes will be geared, as you can see. There we go. So on each dungeon, when you go to their skill timings and you click view boss information, you'll be able to see the skills that the boss is using. So as you can see here, the first attack at this boss is a 6-second cooldown, and the second is also a 6-second cooldown. And if we back out as well, you can see exactly what the boss is going to do. So it is literally going to use these two skills constantly. So this is a 12-second rotation in Grave of Venom. So if we have a look here, as you can see, after 6 seconds the first skill will be cast, and a further 6 seconds, and the boss's ultimate skill will be cast. So Grave of Venom is actually quite an awkward one, as it's pretty rare to get a hero who's got a 12-second ultimate rotation that you can actually utilise here. So realistically, you just want to make sure that you're using attack down at all times on the boss, making sure it's especially up for the ultimate, and that you've got plenty of support to keep your heroes alive. But it does prevail in all of the other dungeons, as they have much longer skill cycles, so you're able to really tune your heroes to make sure that you're getting the most out of your skills and that they're up for the perfect timings. I have covered this a little bit in each of the individual dungeon guides I've done, but I do want to touch on it in a general aspect for all of these skill timings so that you can go forward and know exactly what you're going to be looking for when you're setting up your teams. So once this run's done, I'll jump over to all of the other dungeons. I won't do runs of those. I'm just going to talk you through the skill timings, and we will have a look at where you want to be using your ultimate skills going forward. So first up, if we have a look at Grave of Rot. Now this dungeon is all about the cleansing and the management of the debuffs. So as you can see here, if we look at the boss information, it's got a 6-second skill, another 6-second skill, and a third 6-second skill. So its full rotation is 18 seconds. So in order to have your heroes using their skills once for every rotation, you need to make sure that their ultimate skill is under an 18-second cooldown. So the most important here is having your cleanser running at under 18 seconds. So here I've got Vikuk at 17.93 seconds. So as you can see, I've got him delayed to every 18 seconds on his skills. The rest of my team in this team really don't matter. They can use their skills anywhere during this fight. But I want Vikuk to go after the first skill of the boss and cleanse every single time as soon as that lands. So as you can see here, I'm delaying it till after the first cast of this skill. So he's waiting 24.5 seconds before using his ultimate skill to cleanse these debuffs. This will basically ensure that every time the boss places those double debuffs of the healing, prohibition and the poisons, my cleanser is instantly removing them. And that will work throughout the entire fight. That will never stop working. Outside of that, you can also obviously work into your skills to make sure you've got attack penalty or heal reduction in time for the Devour skill. You can also make sure you've got some support to cover you for the recharging speed penalty or even a second cleanser. The most important thing here is this skill here, because this is going to cause you the most problems. So making sure that you've got your cleanser going straight after that skill every 18 seconds is so vital to having a team that works in Grave of Rot. So if we move on over to the next dungeon, we've got the Ancient Battlefield we'll go to next. So when it comes to Ancient Battlefield, there are a few things that you want to be looking out for. First of all, the most important thing is the buff control, because if this boss is getting its increased attack, it's going to hit incredibly hard. You're going to either want to remove this or you're going to want to prevent it from actually landing. So here I've got my Varesh, who is going just before the boss is going to use his buff skill. So as you can see here, he's got 5 second, 4 second, 5 second, and 4 second. So once again, it's an 18 second rotation here. So what I've got here is I've got my my Varesh set to an 18 second cooldown. So every 18 seconds he'll be using his ultimate skill, but I've got it starting after 25 seconds. So that's going to make it go just after this skill here. So on this skill here, as you can see, he switches to sword form and gains 40% attack up. I never want him to get that buff. So I will always make sure that he is blocking that skill every single time. As for the rest of the team, once again with my team, it doesn't actually make a difference, but if you want to make sure that you're shielding at a certain time, you can obviously make sure that your supports have the right cooldown and have them just using that at a certain time during the fight. So obviously 5 seconds, 4 seconds, so that would be the 9 second mark. Then you've got the 14 second mark and finally the 18 second mark. Obviously that continues throughout the entire fight, as it does with every other dungeon. Now we've got the Heretical Ruins, which we'll have a look at. So for the Heretical Ruins, a lot of people will find that they don't actually need skill timings in this. However, if you're struggling to kill the little phoenixes when they spawn, you can set up your skill timings to make sure that you're dealing with them as soon as they spawn. So if we look here at skill timings, once again we've got the boss with a 6 second cooldown, a 6 second cooldown, another 6 second cooldown, and finally another 6 second cooldown. So this boss is actually a 24 second cooldown, making it incredibly easy to tune for. So all of your skill intervals can be 24 seconds. Okay, so if we're looking at our attack down hero or our debuffer, for example, if you're using a Sigrid in your team and you want to make sure you've got debuffs on the small phoenixes when they spawn. So they spawn on the 3rd skill, so every 18 seconds. So if you set your debuffer for an 18 second cooldown, and say this here was your Sigrid, you set that to an 18.5 second cooldown, what's going to happen is the phoenixes are going to spawn, your debuff is going to hit all of them, place debuffs, and then your Sigrid will nuke all of them at the same time. You can also do the same with your support. So for example here, I've got my Adolphus. If I wanted to make sure that Adolphus was using his ultimate skill just before the ultimate of the boss, we could go for 23.5 seconds for the first cast, and then it's going to repeat every 24 seconds. So we're always going to have the shield just before that big hit comes in. So understanding this is so important to making sure that your teams are actually successful going forward. So we've obviously looked at Ancient Battlefield, we've looked at Heretical Ruins, we've looked at Grave of Rot. Grave of Venom doesn't really need much to touch on, but if we jump over to Grave of Curse, because this one is incredibly important for skill timings, And actually the team I've got set up currently does not have any skill timings, so I'll do them throughout this video as well. I did actually do a video on Grave of Curse yesterday, but I did it purely for the video and deleted the preset team. That did have all of its skill settings set up already. My actual team works nicely. So this is the team I showcased in the video yesterday. If we have a look here at skill timings, I can't actually save. Do you know what? I can. Let's get rid of this for a minute. So in terms of skill timings, this boss once again, it's got a 6-second skill, another 6-second skill, and a third 6-second skill. So it's an 18-second rotation. So the first thing we want to look at is we want all of our skills to use themselves every 18 seconds where possible. Obviously on your damage dealers it's slightly less important. So I've got my Grover here who is going to be removing the buffs. Ignore his current recharge time, he's not in gear. So I'd need this skill to be under 18 seconds cooldown. And the first time I'm going to want to use this is after this buff is placed. So every 6 seconds. Or alternatively, I personally chose to use my Grover with the Crown of the Unclean artifact. So I had him using it just after this so that I could use my ultimate skills from my damage dealers between this period here. So if we have a look here, his initial recharge is 14.5 seconds. So if we go for a 15-second delay here, with it using every 18 seconds, every single time, this hero is going to be using his skills around this mark here. So between the second and third skill. He's going to be losing all of his buffs in time for the ultimate skill, which is the most important thing. Then I've got my shielder here. I want this shielder to make sure he's got his ultimate skill up, but his shield's out before the big ultimate skill hits. So we set that to a 17.5 second cooldown. That is always going to shield just before the big hit. Now, in terms of your attack down in this team, I was using Sigrid for that. So I also want that every 17, well, first on the 17.5 second mark and every 18 seconds thereafter. This will basically ensure that when this buff comes out, my Grover is removing these buffs, and before the ultimate skill where the boss gains his shield, I'm placing attack down to reduce the damage it does, and I'm placing shields to absorb that damage and therefore be able to survive for longer. Obviously, when you're doing this in this perfect team situation, you're not getting any shield, and it makes this boss so easy. So if you are struggling with Grave of Curse, do check out my specified video for it. Hopefully it will give you a helping hand towards being able to clear the content. So last up, what we're going to look at is Vortex. And Vortex used to be a bit awkward for skill timings until it was changed a few weeks ago by the developers. So it used to be about a 20.04 second recharge or something like that. It was quite a weird rotation that basically meant that throughout the fight gradually your automated skills would eventually desync. But now the way they've changed it is always going to be a 20-second rotation. So if you look at my team here, for example, what is really important in Vortex is making sure that your cleanser is going, I don't know what's happened there. There we go. So your cleanser needs to be going just after the third skill. So the third skill on level 4 puts defense penalty on your team. So as you can see, 5 seconds, 5 seconds, 5 seconds, and 5 seconds, making 20 seconds overall. So I've got my cleanser going just before the ultimate skill, removing the defense penalty that was placed by the third skill, and every 20 seconds thereafter. So I'm always going to be getting rid of the defense penalty just before the ultimate skill hits, and it's in this situation, it's also giving me defense up for the next hits as well. In terms of my shield, so this week's shields are kind of be all and end all, so I'm choosing to use an extra shielder here. I've got my shielder set to use his first skill at 24.8 seconds and every 20 seconds. This basically means that just before this skill goes off, after the first round, that's when my shields are going to go out every single time. This covers me from shields for this hit and this hit on my Call of the Lightning tank. And then obviously this hit I'm taking without any support, but then cleansing and healing straight after. This is covered by defense, increased defense. So it just gives this team a good amount of support. But after that, you've got to worry about your damage dealers. So first of all, you want to look at who's placing your defense penalty with your Crown or your Witch's Remains. So in my team, it's Nimbus placing the defense penalty. So as you can see, he's got a 20-second recharge. So I want to make sure that he is going first in my damage dealer rotation. So I've got him set to use his first skill at 12 seconds. After that, once I know the defense penalty will have been placed, I've got my Thaviol going at 12.2 seconds, where he can begin his ultimate skill. They've all got a 20-second cooldown here. And finally, I've got Avelios going at 12.5. Now, his cooldown is actually 19.78, but because I've set it to 20 seconds, he will only use it every 20 seconds, so he will never desync from the rest of the team. So once you've got that sorted, you're going to make sure that all of your skills are being used at the right time. So like I said, you've got support coming here, you've got your tank staying alive for your Call of Lightning, you've got defense penalty being cleansed after the third hit, and you've got some kind of support in place for the final hit. So whether that be your attack down, your increased defense, there's so many ways you can support yourself throughout these fights, but knowing the skill timings is so key. So that is all of the skill timings that are really worth covering at the moment. Obviously, each of the Continental bosses as well, they do have skill timings that you can worry about, but a lot of the time you're building heroes that don't have books for those, and it's not the most optimal, but you're just making sure that you get the damage you can get. So sometimes reaching the 18-second requirement for the skill timings is incredibly difficult to reach on all of these different heroes. So just make sure you're prioritizing the heroes that are placing priority buffs. So if we look here, we've got a 6-second skill and another 6-second skill. The boss actually does this one twice, so it's an 18-second rotation, and that stands for all of the other Continental bosses and the Chaos Shadows that you'll be facing in month 3 of the season. And the final thing I do want to say as well with skill timings is if you are struggling to reach these cutoff points, there are various ways you can get these skills down. So for example, I don't have my Jillian booked at all. So for me to use her on Vortex, I need to get this skill down to less than a 20-second cooldown. So what you need to look out for is on your runes, if you filter, you need to add skill haste. So skill haste is going to reduce the amount of cooldown between your abilities. So here I've got one with double skill haste, we'll equip that. Let's check here, so we've got another one with skill haste there. In terms of sets, there are 2 sets that provide you with skill haste, so you can use the Wrath of the Troll set. Let's just go for that one, it's not the best. And we'll throw that one on as well. Then the other set that gives this is Brotherhood Spirit. So I'm not going to worry about stats actually here, I'm just going to chuck these on. So there we go, that is taking us up to 77 skill haste. So if you look here, that brings this skill down to 19.94 seconds. So the impact of skill haste from sets is actually really important. It's, in my case here on Jillian, saved me from booking this hero yet. I don't know how it's going to play out for me next season, so I don't want to commit the legendary scrolls to this hero just yet. Obviously, if I continue to use her next season, then I'm sure I will. The other option is there are artifacts that will reduce the ultimate recharge time. So if you look here, Spiritual Incense Burner is every time you use this skill, you use your ultimate skill, you're getting 10% of that ultimate energy back. So obviously, let's say you've got a 22-second recharge. Using that is going to grant you an extra 2 seconds effectively, so taking your skill down to a 20-second cooldown. So make sure you are keeping an eye out for these things when building your teams to tweak and adjust to find the best way to reach the cooldowns you need, and you should be flying. You should be able to clear through all of the content as long as you've obviously got the gear and the heroes to do so. It will significantly improve your ability to do things. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop up here on the screen just a reminder of each of the boss's rotation cooldowns. So obviously we've got 18 seconds for Grave of Rot, 18 seconds for Ancient Battlefield, we've got 24 seconds for Heretical Ruins, 18 seconds for Grave of Curse, 12 seconds for Grave of Venom, and 20 seconds for the Vortex. So I really do hope that this will help you to fine-tune your teams to make them a little bit more auto-friendly and potentially help you get through a different area of content that you weren't able to beforehand. But once again, just a massive thank you to you guys for watching my videos today. It's been a crazy 3 weeks of producing content, and I'll see you in the next video.